On the pristine, gilded bridge of the Xylosian warship Celestial Resolve, Grand Counselor Valen waved a slender, three-fingered hand at the main holographic display. It showed a creature in primitive armor, its face a mess of exposed flesh and raw, unfiltered emotion. A human. "Look at it, Fleetmaster," Valen chimed, his voice like soft bells, but with an edge of absolute authority. So much exposed biology. So much fragility. They're born on a planet that actively tries to kill them. A chaotic death world of crushing gravity and atmospheric violence. They broadcast their feelings on their faces for all to see. Their lifespans are just a flicker. And you expect me to believe they're a threat? Fleetmaster Calyx, a mountain of polished carapace and controlled power, simply inclined his head. Grand Counselor, the preliminary scans are anomalous. Their energy signatures are crude, but they're potent. Valen laughed, a sound like crystals shattering. Potent? Calyx? They aren't warriors. They're survivors. And in this galaxy, survival isn't enough. The Concordat has voted. We'll offer them pacification and genetic uplifting. They're a flawed, chaotic species in need of our guidance. Trust me, they'll thank us for it. Prepare the fleet. This will be a simple matter of integration. A little show of force, a swift surrender, and another star system brought into enlightened order. Across the Galactic Concordat, 1,000 other species listened in and nodded. The consensus was absolute. The noisy, emotional primates from Sol were a biological curiosity, a historical footnote waiting to be written. They were weak, and they needed to be fixed. The Xylosian pacification fleet was a site designed to make entire civilizations give up on the spot. 100 vessels, each a gleaming spear of silver and light, tore open space-time and appeared at the edge of the human system. They were perfect, silent, and radiated overwhelming power. From his command throne, Fleetmaster Calyx felt a familiar sense of divine purpose. This wasn't war, it was enlightenment. He ordered the standard ultimatum broadcast across all frequencies. To the inhabitants of the third planet, Earth, by the authority of the Galactic Concordat, you are ordered to surrender all planetary sovereignty. Your biological and societal chaos will be brought into harmony. Cease all resistance. Prepare for genetic uplifting to correct your flaws. You have one of your solar cycles to comply. This offer is not negotiable. Calyx leaned back, waiting for the flood of panicked, terrified messages. He pictured their primitive leaders scrambling, their fragile emotions getting the best of them. Instead, there was only silence. Hours passed. The Fleetmaster was growing impatient. "Are they not receiving the transmission?" he chimed, his tone sharp. "Transmission confirmed, Fleetmaster," an officer replied, his antennae twitching. "They got it, and they've sent a reply." "On screen," Calyx commanded. The main display flickered. It wasn't the face of a pleading leader. It was just text, stark and simple, written in perfect Concordat standard. Just 6 words: "You have made a grave error." Calyx just stared. The audacity was, frankly, insulting. Was this some kind of primitive humor? A glitch? He would not tolerate this. That's not how the galaxy worked. Order was kept through strength. These creatures needed a lesson. "They require a demonstration," Calyx announced to the bridge. "Target their largest satellite, the one they call Luna. Fire a single purification lance, a surface strike, shatter a mountain. Let them witness our power and rethink their foolish pride." A thin, brilliant beam of sapphire energy shot from the Celestial Resolve, crossing the void in seconds. This was a weapon that could peel the crust from a planet, a tool so powerful it was considered an art form. It was aimed at a huge, dead crater on the moon. This was a show of force, meant to break their spirit before the fight even started. But as the lance neared its target, something impossible happened. The dead gray surface of Luna erupted in a web of incandescent light. Energy grids, buried, for who knows how long, flared to life, forming hexagonal patterns that pulsed with unimaginable power. The purification lance didn't hit rock, it hit a shield of pure, defiant energy. The beam vanished, its awesome power absorbed and shunted into the lunar dust, making the ground glow a dull, angry red. On the bridge of the Celestial Resolve, you could hear a collective gasp. Every sensor console screamed. "Report!" Calyx snapped, shooting up from his throne. "Energy readings? They're impossible," the tactical officer stammered. "The shield took the full impact. It's a brute force energy sink. It's not elegant, it's not sophisticated, it's just overwhelming. Sir, the energy required to power that..." Calyx stared at the glowing moon. They were waiting. They were prepared. The ultimatum wasn't a surprise. It was the starting pistol. Another officer called out, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Fleetmaster, we are detecting weapon emplacements all over the satellite, powering up now. But the signatures are wrong. Not energy-based. They're kinetic." Cold laughter echoed from the comms. It was a human voice this time. A woman's. "You were saying something about a demonstration?" she asked, her voice dripping with mock curiosity. "It's our turn now." Before Calyx could even think of a reply, the moon answered, not with beams of light, but with streaks of crude physical matter. Projectiles, solid slugs of metal launched by massive magnetic accelerators, tore through space at a ridiculous fraction of light speed. They were archaic, brutal, and terrifyingly effective. One of the slugs slammed into an escort frigate. Its advanced energy shields, designed to stop plasma and lasers, just flickered and died. The shield didn't know what to do with a solid object moving that fast. The frigate didn't explode in a clean burst of light. It just came apart, torn in two by a mindless, speeding rock. Panic, an emotion Calyx had only read about in history files, began to creep into his mind. The human fleet, a bunch of what looked like rusty, lopsided bricks, finally started to move. But they didn't get into a neat battle line. They didn't engage. They scattered, seemingly running in every direction. A few ships even broke off and gunned it toward the system's gas giants Jupiter and Saturn. Cowards. Calyx spat, his composure returning. This, he understood. A disorganized retreat. "Pursue them! All ships, full power. Let none escape. We will make an example of every last one." The gleaming silver spears of the Xylosian fleet surged forward, easily catching up to the clumsy-looking human ships. They dove deeper into the system, past Mars, and straight for the dense, chaotic asteroid belt. It was just a chase, a simple hunt. But on the lower decks of the Celestial Resolve, a junior analyst named Lyra was watching her console with a growing sense of dread. Her gravimetric sensors were painting a picture that didn't look like a panicked retreat at all. "Fleetmaster," she transmitted, her voice hesitant. "I advise caution. The human ships, their engine burns are horribly inefficient, but their course corrections are perfect, too perfect. They're navigating the debris fields with a precision our computers can't match. And their heat signatures, they're running their reactors so hot they should be melting. It doesn't make sense." "Your concern is noted, analyst," Calyx replied, waving it off. "They are Deathworlders. Their tech is as chaotic as they are. They are just pushing their primitive engines too hard. Hold your course." Lyra could only watch as the Xylosian fleet, a model of order and discipline, flew neatly into the heart of the asteroid belt. The human ships weaved between the massive rocks like predators in their home territory. And then Lyra understood. This wasn't a retreat. It was a lure, They weren't running from the fleet. They were leading it to the killing field. "Fleetmaster, it's a trap!" she screamed into her comms. But it was already too late. The second the last Xylosian ship crossed some invisible line, the asteroid belt came alive. Thousands of asteroids, which everyone had dismissed as inert rock and ice, suddenly dropped camouflage screens. They weren't asteroids. They were weapon platforms, hollowed-out fortresses bristling with the same crude, terrifying railguns as the moon. A storm of kinetic death erupted from all directions. There was no strategy to it, no elegant dance of energy beams. It was a hailstorm of pure physical violence. Xylosian shields, the pinnacle of defensive tech, collapsed under impacts they were never designed to stop. Immaculate silver hulls were breached, torn, and shattered by chunks of depleted uranium. The void filled not with light, but with shrapnel and the vented atmospheres of dying ships. At the same time, the human ships that had been fleeing pulled a maneuver that defied concordant physics. They used Jupiter's immense gravity like a slingshot, whipping around the gas giant and accelerating to impossible speeds. They fell on the rear of the Xylosian fleet like a pack of starving wolves. Their tactics were horrifying to Calyx's ordered mind. They didn't hold formation. They swarmed, attacking from above, below, from all sides at once. They even used their own damaged ships as weapons, ramming them into the engine blocks of Xylosian cruisers. Their communication channels, which Calyx monitored in horrified fascination, weren't the calm, measured tones of professional soldiers. They were a mess of shouts, laughter, and what his translator just called incoherent rage. Then, the final violation. A heavily damaged human carrier, its hull blackened and bleeding fire, accelerated directly towards the Celestial Resolve. It wasn't trying to ram them. It was getting closer. "They're launching boarding pods!" An officer shrieked. "They intend to board us!" Boarding actions were a relic of a barbaric past, a tactic so crude it hadn't been seen in galactic warfare for 10,000 years. Calyx couldn't wrap his mind around it. Why would anyone choose to fight face-to-face in the bloody chaos of a ship's corridor? He was about to find out. Alarms screamed across the Celestial Resolve. The once pristine bridge was a scene of chaos. Consoles sparked as kinetic slugs hammered the hull. Then, a new alarm, one Calyx had only heard in simulations, echoed through the ship, a piercing tone that meant boarders. Security teams to decks 5 through 9. "Repel the invaders," he commanded, his voice tight. He switched the main view screen to internal security. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. The human soldiers burst through the airlocks they'd torn open. They weren't the fragile beings from the reports. They were giants in bulky, powered armor that hissed and whirred with raw power. They moved with a speed and aggression that was absolutely terrifying. Xylosian security teams, elegant and precise, fired their plasma stunners. The beams hit the humans with enough energy to knock any other species out for hours. The humans stumbled. Some dropped to one knee. And then they got back up, armor smoking, and charged forward roaring. The concept of adrenaline, of fighting through crippling pain, of sheer stubborn will just ignoring physical trauma, was a biological impossibility to the Xylosians. They were fighting with chemical propellant firearms that spat hot metal, and in some cases with sharpened steel blades. They ducked, used cover, and screamed tactics at each other in a guttural language. One soldier, his visor cracked, ripped it off to reveal a face twisted into a terrifying expression the translator struggled with, finally settling on maniacal glee. He was smiling. They were enjoying this. Calyx watched as his elite guards, warriors trained in a 1,000-year-old martial art, were simply overwhelmed by brute, unrestrained violence. The humans fought like cornered animals. They fought like they had nothing to lose. They fought like they had been doing this their entire lives. The truth crashed down on Calyx with the force of a railgun slug. They had. Their entire evolutionary history was one of unrelenting violence against their world and each other. War wasn't a political tool for them. It was an instinct. The Battle of the Sol System, as it would be called, lasted 47 minutes. Of the 100 pristine ships in the Zalosian fleet, 97 were annihilated. The other 3, including the crippled flagship Celestial Resolve, were allowed to escape. Their hyperdrives were left untouched. The message was clear. Go. Tell the others what you saw here. The Galactic Concordat convened in an emergency session. The chamber, usually filled with the soft chimes and gentle hums of 1,000 species, was dead silent. In the center of the room, a single trembling figure gave his report. Fleetmaster Calyx. His polished carapace was cracked. One of his arms was in a medical brace. Behind him, holographic displays showed the raw footage from his ship's security cameras. The Council watched armored humans rampage through the Celestial Resolve. They watched a single human soldier, wounded and bleeding, hold off a dozen Zylosian guards with nothing but a combat knife and a terrifying scream. Grand Counselor Valen stared, his usual serene superiority gone, replaced by a mask of pale, stark terror. He finally got it. They had all gotten it so wrong. They saw a death world and assumed it was a prison that made its people weak. They were wrong. Earth wasn't a prison. It was a crucible. It was a forge, burning away weakness and leaving only hardened, resilient strength. Humans weren't weak because they came from a planet that tried to kill them. They were the apex predators of a planet that tried to kill everything. They weren't survivors of a death world. They were its masters. The report ended. Calyx stood shaking, awaiting his judgment, but no one spoke. The arrogance that had filled the chamber just 1 day ago had evaporated, replaced by a cold, primal fear. They hadn't poked a primitive species. They had kicked open the cage of a monster. Humanity's chaotic emotions weren't a weakness. They were the fuel for a ferocity the galaxy had never seen. Their short lifespans didn't make them timid. It made them desperate, brave, and utterly unwilling to back down. Their seemingly primitive kinetic weapons weren't a sign of immaturity. They were a testament to a philosophy of brutal efficiency. When faced with an obstacle, humans didn't try to elegantly go around it. They built a bigger hammer and smashed it to dust. The galaxy learned a vital new truth that day. There's a reason some species are the only intelligent life on their homeworlds. It's because nothing else could survive them. The Concordat declared humans weak, and in response, humanity unleashed a hell born from millennia of fighting for their own survival. They hadn't just won a battle. They had issued a warning to the entire galaxy, and the galaxy, at long last, was listening. Thank you for joining us for this story. If you enjoy tales of humanity's unexpected strength, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Now we have a question for you. What should the Galactic Concordat's next move be? Should they try for diplomacy, or should they prepare for a war they now know they can't possibly win? Let us know what you think in the comments below.